Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to be simplifying HTML and CSS for students, teachers, or perhaps anyone that would want to learn or be familiar with HTML and CSS. I have worked with this not just as a computer science and ICT teacher, but equally in the context of working as a developer in a company. So let's get started. So what exactly is HTML and CSS? HTML simply refers to hypertext markup language, and CSS stands for cascading style sheets, and these are the two core technologies for building web pages. I guess you all are familiar with web pages. Maybe at some point you've had to do a Google search, or come across websites. So the two core technologies used in building these most websites are, HTML, which stands for hypertext markup language, and CSS, which stands for cascading style sheet. Now let's dive deeper. HTML actually is used to build, the skeleton, or the structure of a web page, while CSS adds styles, performs, some styling on the web page. So you might be wondering what exactly a web page is. For example, on my screen here we have a web page from Wikipedia talking about William III of England. As you can see, this web page has some links, on this left section, and clicking on this link redirects you to another web page, right? So kind of look at the website, because usually we are going to interchange this. Kind of look at the website as a book, while a web page as individual pages in that book, right? So a website contains pages that are interlinked. For example, this web page you have for example, on Wikipedia website you have pages interlinked. For example, clicking on create an account, on this, create a new account, or log in, provides a form to log in, right? And reading through this article, you have some links which when clicks or when clicked redirects you to another page, right? So this is a web page, basically. Okay, so that was the definition of what HTML and CSS can do. So as mentioned earlier, the structure of this page is developed with HTML, while the styles are developed or added with CSS. As mentioned earlier, HTML stands for for hypertext markup language, while CSS stands for cascading style sheet. Now, how does HTML develop the structure of a web page? Now, it uses what they call tags, right? Or some people call them elements. So each of HTML elements represents something. Now on my screen you see an image of what I explained earlier, how HTML acts just as a skeleton, right? While CSS adds some styling. As you can see on this left section, we have a skeletal structure, while CSS adds some styles Now let's dive deeper. So HTML actually provides, or creates a structure of a web page using tags or elements. Now each tag or element, represents something. Now take note, web pages are being viewed on web browsers, and a web browser is simply a piece of software that is used to surf the net, right? So the only difference between this Wikipedia page here and what we are going to be and the web page we are going to be developing, we might develop one web page or two, interlinked somehow, but the only difference is actually this is live on the web, right? But the one we are going to develop will run locally on our PC, or computer. Now HTML documents, or when we write our HTML tags or elements, they are like codes, right? When written, they are compiled, or permit me use that in quotes, somehow, or interpreted, yes, by a web browser. So we have several types of web browsers, right? We have Google Chrome, we have Opera Mini, we have Firefox, and a lot more. Now, where do we write these hypertext markup languages, or where do we put together these HTML elements or tags? We do that in a text editor. Now, in the context of secondary or high school, usually they use either Notepad or Sublime Text or Notepad++, right? So we are going to try out with Notepad, and later on we are going to use something else, just for example purposes. Now on my screen you have Notepad open. If you do not know how to open Notepad, it's quite simple, right? You simply click on the Windows button, and you can search for Notepad, right? And there you go, that's Notepad. You click open and it gets open for you. Now we are going to write or type a basic structure of a web page. So let's get started. I'm going to type and explain the tags later on. So there we go, we have okay, so there you go, we have HTML and head, title, so let's say our title is my web page, body, open our body. So let's say hello world, and we close our body tag, and then we close our HTML tag. Okay, there you go. This is a basic template, basic structure of a web page, right? A basic structure. Now remember, I said these are tags. If you are new looking at this, it might be strange, right? But remember, they are conventional. They were not set by us, but by the W3 consortium. That could be researched later on, but this is conventional. So we simply ought to understand how it works so we can better work with it. So these are tags or elements. So, and when someone writes this and saves and runs in a browser, the browser interprets this as a web page, right? So what does this mean? So whenever the browser sees this, the browser understands it's an HTML tag, or the browser understands that this is the beginning of an HTML tag, right, of an HTML document, or page, let me put it that way. And the browser understands that, oh, so this is an HTML file, right? And the browser checks this and notices the other tags. So the head tag, now notice that these tags appear in pair, right? We have the opening tag and the closing tag. So remember, this is conventional. Now even the francophones must understand this as it is. For example, a francophone cannot translate title as titre. It is not going to work because this is conventional. If you take this to China, a Chinese man must understand this and write it exactly the way it is because it is conventional. So these tags appear in pair. We have the opening tag and we have the closing tag. Notice the opening tag contains the less than and greater than symbol or sign, while the closing tag has the same but with an exception of a slash right before the head is spelled itself. So whatever appears in between this head tag, we have the title, right? Now it is true that there are some tags that comes between the head tag, but we are not going to cover that for now. In between the head tag we have the title tag, right? Notice the title tag with an opening and closing tag. So most tags in HTML appear in pair, right? Now between the title, opening and closing tag we have my web page written there. So what does this mean? It simply means that on our web page, my web page, this statement is going to appear as our title, and usually the title of a web page usually is written at the tab. We are going to see that. Then we have the body opening tag and the body closing tag. So what appears between the body opening and closing tag is actually visible on the body of the web page. We are going to see that equally. And in between the body opening and closing tag we have a tag, notice still in pair with the opening and closing tag, right? Notice in between the body opening and closing tag we have a P tag, and this P tag simply stands for paragraph, right? Paragraph. And what does this mean? Whenever the browser sees this, the browser is going to understand that put this hello world in a paragraph, right? And then we finally have the closing HTML tag. Now this is just a sample, a template. Now after typing this, you must save, right? And please notice, take note of where you have saved your document, because usually students especially have this challenge of locating where they have saved their documents. Especially during examination, right? So as mine has been saved on the desktop and in a folder called new folder, and when using Notepad, take note that you must name your file, right? Not just when using Notepad, you must name your file. So let us name this as let's say my page, right? Or let's name this as web page. Yes, web page. Now take note of this. When using Notepad, you must change this extension. There are some other text editors that would immediately understand that this is an HTML file, but some may not actually understand, like Notepad. Notepad isn't that too sensitive, right? So you must change this to webpage.html. So HTML is an extension for an HTML document, right? So take note, that's really important. And as you change this extension to .html, you must change this option save as type to all files, right? Because if you do not, even though you have the file name as this, your file will still be saved as a txt file. Now, what is the difference between a txt file and an HTML file? Now, a txt file is simply a text file, right? Just a mere text file. While an HTML file is actually the HTML document, which is actually the web page, right? So it is better to save this as your web page, so immediately you click on that, you're going to find the result, open on a web browser. And whenever you want to edit, you can then open that web, that .html document in a text editor. Is that okay? Now let me talk a little bit about file extension. So for an HTML document, it is .html, right? For a PDF file, it is .pdf. I mean the extension, right? For a Microsoft Word document, it is .doc, sometimes with an X. Now with this said, let us save. Okay, so when saved, you notice the name has been added here, web page, right? So this is the file opened with a text editor, but actually this is it here. So if we open this, we find this web page, hello world. Permit me to zoom. Yes, so we have this hello world, right? So this is our first web page. Now and you will notice everything I explained earlier, right? So this is a paragraph. If I zoom this to 100, you would notice this is a paragraph, and this entire section, is a body of our web page. And if we get back to our code, you would notice that on the body, in between the body tag, we just added a paragraph, hello world, right? And this is it. So this is how you develop a web page, right? Or you build a web page. So you can imagine if you would want to have a fancy web page like this one, you imagine the work it takes. Not just the work, I mean you need to add this by yourself, right? Yes. So we have hello world. Now notice the title of our web page, right? Where do you find it? Here. So here we have the title of our web page, my web page, and this was set here in between the title tag. So this then makes you to understand that whatever you want to achieve on your web page, you must add that using HTML tags or HTML element. And so that is why we said HTML stands for hypertext markup language. So it simply defines the structure of your web page. Is that okay? Good. So here we have this, and this is our result. So imagine if we are to add other things on our web page. It therefore means that we need to figure out what tag we need, right, to add this. So let's add another paragraph, right? So, or perhaps let's add our paragraph, right? Let's add some more text. So we can say, hello world, I am new to web authoring with HTML, right? So when you are done adding something on your page, on your code, you save, right? Or you could simply use Ctrl S. And when you are done saving, it is needless opening this same page again, on a new tab. So if you already have your page open, you just refresh, right? As you refresh, you find the output, or you find the result. That's interesting, right? So then we might then need to find out how to do other things, add some more things on our web page. Having this simple web page isn't interesting, right? So everything then can be achieved with HTML tags, right? So as you notice here, this is in bold. So in order to add this, to make this in bold, they used an HTML tag that bolds a text, right? In order to make this blue or this, they use an HTML tag that makes this blue, right? In order to add this image, they used an HTML tag to add this image, right? In order to add this form, they use an HTML tag to add this form, right? Yes, in order to add this line, they used an HTML tag to add this line, as you can see. In order to underline, they used an HTML tag, right? So it must then be our interest to find out how we can achieve other things with our web page, right? So then let's figure out how we can make this bold, right? So in HTML we can just simply add a B tag and we close the B tag. So this then makes you to understand that we can nest tags, right? The B tag goes along with paragraph, right? Depending on what you would want to achieve, right? You could just nest the tags and to achieve your desired result. So let us save with Ctrl S or click the file and save. Then we refresh our web page, and there you go, our result is now in bold, right? Okay, so let us let's do something else. Now let us add another paragraph, right? And let's say, so remember, whenever you open a tag, do not forget to close that tag, right? So let's add another paragraph. Let's say I am from China, right? So let's close this paragraph and we save with Ctrl S. So we might want to make this, we might want to underline this, right? So we use the U tag. The U tag stands for underline, and we do this. Oh, sorry. US. So if we save and open this, you'll find I am from China underlined, right? That's interesting. It therefore means whatever you might want to achieve on this page, you must use a tag responsible for that. So you might be asking, where are the tags and how do I get them? So with more practice, you'll be able to get to know these tags and master them. But concerning some basic tags, of course you can always find these tags on the internet, right? So on websites like W2 School, you might find basic HTML tags, So getting a tag and what it does, right? So for instance, let's find a tag which is used to add a line, right? A horizontal line. So we might just get to on Google and type it out, an HTML tag to add a horizontal line, right? Here is it here. So the HR element, so you remember I said they are called tags or elements, right? So the HR element is most often displayed as a horizontal row, right? So that makes our work simple. So let us add a horizontal line or row before this. So I simply add this, right? Let me save. And coming back to my web page, here is my line, right, displayed. So that's how simple HTML is, as simple as it is. So do not bother about how you're going to memorize these tags. The more you work with HTML, the more you get familiar with them, and these tags stick into your memory, right? So let's continue exploring more HTML tags. Let's see. So we have explored the paragraph tag, the bold tag. Okay, so let's explore more. Let's so we have this web page. So what else can we add on our web page? So we have seen the bold. So let's add a heading, right? A heading. So let's assume we are writing. So let's write our own article on William III of England, right? So let's delete this. Okay, so we are going to have our heading. So in HTML, headings are added with H1, and they range from H1 to H6. So H1 being the biggest and H6 being the smallest. So let's write about William III of England. And we close our tag. So let's save and let's check it out. Refreshing our web page gives us this William III of England. So we might want to underline, yes, so let's underline our heading, right? So let's add the underline tag. So notice that the effect of a tag, works on content or any text or whatever, or on an object, when it is placed in between the opening and closing tag, or let's say perhaps after the tag, right, or the element. For example, we cannot say we are underlining this William III of England if perhaps our underline tag is found here. It doesn't work, right? So it's going to affect this if and only if it's found here in between, right? So I've saved. Let me refresh. So I have this on the line. So let's add a horizontal line between that, right? So we can add more. So we do this, and there you go, right? So let's add a paragraph, and that is easily done using the paragraph tag. So in between our paragraph tag, we are going to copy something from here. So let's copy this. So permit me indent. So indenting or leaving some spaces, it is not actually a rule, right? Or writing in small letters, it is not actually a rule, but just for the sake of orderliness, and neatness, we might want to do so. So let's add this. Okay, let's check it out. Okay, yeah, the text is too long. Okay, I think let us reduce the size of the length of this text. Okay, yes, so that's okay. So let's refresh our page and see the results. So there you go. When zoomed out back to 100%, so there you go, we have that. So let's continue. What else can we add on our page? So let's make a text bold, right? Let's make 11th of April bold. So we simply add the bold tag, and we close our bold tag. Notice that if this bold tag is not closed, the bold effect is going to affect everything, but we want just this date to be in bold, right? So when saved, we have that in bold. So let's add another line. And let's add an image, right? Let's download this image, see if it's possible. So with this, clicking on save, we have this image downloaded. Yeah, so we have an image here. So how do we add images in HTML? Let's assume we just want to search that out on Google. So let's do I am actually showing this so that you would develop the habit of studying along with research, right? So add image in HTML. So we have a tag called the image tag, right? And the image tag has an attribute called src, or the source attribute. So we might need to rename this so something else, let's say image, right? So notice the extension of our image is a JPEG, right? JPG. So how do we do the addition? We use the image tag, right? Followed by the source attribute src with the name of the image dot the extension. And closed. So let's check that out if it worked. And there you go. We have that as easy as it is. And we could continue doing more and more examples. For example, adding an HTML table, adding an HTML list, right? So let's delete this and try that out. Adding an HTML list. So we have the unordered list, which can be added with the UL tag, right? And an unordered list is simply a list, like bullet points, without any exact ordering or numbering, like 1, 2, 3 or ABC. So to add that, we need the UL tag, and in between the UL tag we have the LI tag, which represents list, right? List items, while the UL represents unordered list. So here we can have, let's say, rice. We close that. Let's say book, right? That's it. We have an unordered list. So refreshing this, zoom. Refreshing these is going to give us, there you go, we have this list. Or let's add a paragraph. Let's say a list of food, right? And there you go, we have this. And we can equally add an ordered list, right? An ordered list just has a specific order, which is the same syntax, and where OL stands for ordered list and LI stands for list items. So doing this, we're going to have just 2 list items. We might equally so there are many other things you could do, or tags you would want to practice with, right? For example, tables, for example, hyperlinks, right? I think we can try out some. So let's try out an HTML table, right? So adding a table in HTML is really quite simple, and there are a couple of ways in which this can be achieved. but let us take the standard and simple way. So adding a table in HTML requires the table tag, right, or the table element. And the table element has is simply spelled as table, which is of course an opening and closing tag, right? And in between, and a table is made up of rows and columns, right? So when adding a table on our web page, we must have that in mind. So let us go column wise. So we have adding the first column, right? We use the tr tag, sorry, the first row, we use the table row tag, right? So let's say that's our first row, right? We close. In between the tr tag, we can either put our td tag, table data, or th. So th simply represents table header, right? Table head. Yes. So our first row is actually the header. That's what carries the column titles, right? So we can simply do a th. We can simply do a th, and let's say we want name. Yes. Close at th, right? And the other row, which is going to bear the column head, right? Name, let's say h, and we close, right? Now let's move to the second row. The second row then is going to bear data. We're going to begin filling these headers, right? The name and the age. So we add we close the table row. Now the tag for that is table data, right? Table data. So in between that, so in HTML it's going to be filled automatically, right? As you can see, adding the first data will fall under the name column. The second table data in that same row will fall under the age. So let's take John. So the next table data, let's say John is 20 years old. We save, we control S. So always remember saving your work. This goes to everyone, especially students. It's usually a good practice to save your work after every interval in order not to lose what you've been working on. That said, John 20. Now there's one thing we left out, and that is the border attribute. The border attribute. So this is how a table can be implemented, but we need to add a border, right? So what are attributes? Attributes are simply added along with HTML tags to give it more information, right? Someone said the tag tells the browser what to do, but an attribute adds some specifications on how to do it, right? So here we are going to add a border, let's say 1 px, right? So let's save this and try it out. So as you can see, name age, we have John, and John is 20. So don't bother about this how the table looks, that's why CSS exists, to modify them. So next on the line, we are going to have let's add another data, right? Let's add another table data. And in order to do this, then we need to add another row, right? And that row comes below this row, right? And so we do a TD, right? A TD, and we add another name, let's say Mary, and let's say, and Mary is 16 years old, right? Very good. And then we close the row, and upon saving this and refreshing our page, we see another row added. So you notice the names fall under the column name and the ages fall under the column age, right? So putting all this together, that's how you could easily build a web page using HTML and CSS. So there are other things which could be achieved with this, right? Let's look at another instance. Let's see how we can add a page linking, like a link that redirects to another page. So in order to achieve that, we need to use the anchor tag, right? So let's assume I think we should remove this. Yes, right? So we are going to add another web page and then add a link on this web page that is going to link, that is going to redirect to that other web page, right? So let's say let's call this home page. Let's change the title of this and call this home page, and let's add a paragraph, and let's say this is a home page, right? This is a home page, right? And let's save this. Now you're going to note that so far we have been using Notepad. So now I'm going to migrate to another text editor called Visual Studio Code. Yes, Visual Studio Code, and it's quite easy to use and simple to use. Okay, that said, let me minimize this and let's move down to Visual Studio Code. And in my Visual Studio Code, I have this folder open, right? So the same thing applies for Notepad. And notice my image is in the same folder. So of good practice, students are advised to do this. Even though you might have your image in another folder, you just need to use to redirect that location of that image. I mean, to put in the right location. So but just for simplicity, images are put in the same folder as the file, right? So with this open, let us refresh our home page. So this is a home page. As you can see, the title has been changed to home page. Let's move on. Let's add another page called the about page, right? About.html. So this is my about page open, and this is my home page open. So on the home page, let us add another paragraph. So you notice how simple it is, typing with VS Code, right? Visual Studio Code. So simply typing paragraph and pressing enter opens and closes the tag for me, and I just need to add what I need to add between the tags, right? So let's add a link, right, using the anchor. tag. So with the anchor tag and the attribute href, I can simply type about.html and type about page, or saying, or let's say click here. Yes, and save. So what did I just do? I just added an anchor tag, right? And the anchor tag simply serves to, add a link that will redirect to another page. So this is a text, that is going to carry the link, and this is the link that will be redirected to. When this text is clicked, right, and this is, take note, the href tag takes in the name of the file about.html. So that's it. If we refresh our page, there we go. We have, this is a home page, and we have click here. So when we click here, oh, did we set anything on the about page? Okay, so on the about page, let's follow the same procedure, right? We do an HTML, right? Also notice how VS Code or Visual Studio Code IDE or text editor easily completes my code for me. So we have the head, right? Yes. The title, so our title is simply going to be the about us, right? And we have the body, and in between the body, let's add a paragraph, right, that says welcome. So that's it. We refresh this, and when click here, we are taken to the about page, and that's basically the same thing that happens here. When click here, we are taken to another page, even though yes, when click here, you see it loads and it takes us to this page, right? So that's how simple it is working with HTML. So let's give an introduction to CSS. As said earlier, CSS simply stands for Cascading Style Sheet, and it is used to simply add some styles on an HTML document. So as you notice, this doesn't actually look good, right? So adding CSS to this page is going to actually be very interesting. I mean, we make the page look good and interesting for users, right? Thank you very much for watching this video. If you have any questions, do well to drop your questions on the comment box, and if you would want me to record any other tutorial on any other thing, do well to equally drop on the comment box. Do well to also like, subscribe, and share this video with fellow students, fellow teachers. It might also be helpful to someone. Thank you. Okay guys, so thank you very much for watching this video. In our next video, we are going to cover CSS, and we're going to see what it's all about, and we are going to do some examples and learn more about CSS. Do well to like, subscribe, and invite your friends, invite your colleagues, invite your loved ones to equally learn. Thank you very much. See you next time.